Hello, everyone. We'll be talking about collaboration, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Mostly, we hopefully will talk about our experiences. I really think parts of experiencing life is making those mistakes, and especially if you work a lot with people, it's important to take in, meet people where they are. And so we'll start here and then just go around and introduce ourselves, and then we'll start the conversation.
Yes, my name is Chad Kampe. I'm the executive director of the Mid-Continent Oceanographic Institute, which is a fake ocean center in disguise of it's a creative writing and tutoring center for 1,200 students in the Twin Cities we serve. So we do a variety of programs. We do daily after-school homework help. We published a book with Zinc, who is here last year with 60 fifth graders from East St. Paul. We also, every Wednesday and Friday, publish a book in 2 hours with second through fourth grade classes. So publishing creativity is what we do with students, and it's a fake ocean. Institute is sort of the hook. We are inspired by 826 National, which is out of San Francisco. The author Dave Eggers have founded. And so there's 7 of them around the country. So I will be talking about our collaboration with 826 and what we've done with them. And also I moonlight at night doing parties called Flip Phone around the Twin Cities, which are different dance parties. And so we throw them at First Avenue and different places. And there's also a lot of collaboration there. So I'll be wearing both my education hat and my party hat during this conversation.
Great. I was waiting for the party part. My name is Mouacheupao, and I'm currently the program officer for creative placemaking at Twin Cities Local Initiative Support Corporation. So we're a national organization. I'm going to put my party hat on too after this. So we're a national organization that we're an intermediary for community development. So we do a lot of affordable housing, transit-oriented development, those types of things. But my work is really rooted in arts and culture. So we think about art as an expression of culture, and culture as an expression of people and the places that we work in. And so how do you actually hit 3 bottom lines: social, physical, and economic impact through arts and culture? And then on the side, I'm also the producer and co-host for Hmong FM, which is a radio program on KFAI. So every Friday night, I host a show, started 10 years ago. It's unbelievable. It's one of the only programs, well, it's a Hmong program. All of the artists that we play are Hmong, but we air in English. And so we're really proud of that, to be able to create some cross-cultural relationships. I'm also the founder and producer this year of the Fresh Traditions Fashion Show. And so again, it's a fashion show that showcases Hmong artists, Hmong designers. It's November 6th, so I'm going to do a little shout out for that show if you're interested in fashion. What else? Oh, and part of how I became a part of the creative community here is I used to be the executive director for the Center for Hmong Arts and Talent, and so that's really where I had my real good life lesson in collaboration.
My name is PaviElle French. I am an interdisciplinary artist, dancer, actor, writer, singer. I'm principal vocalist. I've been doing this for about 20 years, well, a little longer than 20 years. I'm getting older. I've been doing this since I was 5, let me put it that way. I've been doing this since I was about 5 years old, born and raised in the Rondo community. I am a Penumbra theater kid, so my whole life was steeped and rooted in the arts because I grew up there and I had no other choice but to do it. Oh, and I see myself on camera. That's weird. Okay. But otherwise than that, I have collaborated throughout my whole career working with other artists in the community, and I have a lot of knowledge about that, just growing up and learning and being a kid in that. And I got some pretty good do's and don'ts and a lot of stuff to talk about. So very thankful and grateful to be here, and it's an honor to be speaking to you all today.
Hello, I'm Michael Koppelman. I'm currently a brewer. I make beer. It's a beverage that's got sort of euphoric properties when you drink it. I'm a musician. Actually, since a kid, I wanted to be a rock star. I'm still working on that, so any help you can give me with that. I worked with Prince back in the Graffiti Bridge Diamonds and Pearls days, and have since an entrepreneur which really means someone who builds teams. I mean, if you're successful at really virtually anything in life, you have to build teams. And I learned a lot about that from Prince in both do's and don'ts. So looking forward to the conversation.
Well, thank you, everyone. And so it looks like we have lots of party people. We have beer, music, fashion, and late night parties. So let's talk a little bit about what makes you compelled to start collaborating with someone beyond the idea that you might have something in common. Anyone can take this.
I can start. So I think as a creative person that doesn't really have any artistic skills, so I'm not a practicing artist. I'm more of an arts administrator, and I agree that it's about building teams. So what really compelled me was that I couldn't make the art myself. So my entire career has been around collaborations and partnerships and working with people and building relationships. It's interesting to be up here and have these lights shining on me because I hear about it all the time from the artists that I work with. And so I'm usually the one who's shining the light on them. And so I'm kind of like, oh, this is what they talk about when they say they can't really see the audience and the light's shining on them. So I just think it's been, so I'm Hmong American, and there's actually no Hmong word for art. And so part of my journey has been really kind of exploring that and what does that mean? What are the implications of that on a culture? There are, and so that's one thing. And then as I've, gone through my, these different experiences, and I've started to realize that, the artists in our community they are our historians. So we also have not had a written language until the 60s when we were being converted by the French missionaries. And so there are a lot of things that is really weaved in with my culture, and that I really have been relying on artists to really help us tell these stories, right? And to share these stories in a way that can catch people's attention and in ways that I can't do myself. And so it's been, and there are, I think that there's the kind of like the romanticized way of thinking about collaborations. They are actually the only way that I can do my work, and they are not always easy. It's really about being able to be aware of the assumptions that you have when you go into a relationship with somebody. It's just, we can't, right? As human beings, we can't not assume. But I think part of my learning has been how to be aware of the assumptions that I make and to be really clear about what I can bring to the collaboration and what my expectations are in return. So I can't say enough about collaborations. It's really the only way that I can be successful in the things that I do.
I would say for the flip phone side that if you don't collaborate, then you don't really have a party. You have to work with a venue, you have to work with, we feature drag performers, you work with other DJs, so you have to collaborate and sort of put together the story for the night. And by doing that, you have to know who those players are, and I think that part of the collaboration is having that vision of what you want to accomplish, and then who those people are, and bring them together to tell that story for the night. And if you I do think that one person has to have that overall vision, but the collaboration and figuring out how people come in and sort of interface with that for the evening that's sort of how we put together our different events.
I'm pretty compelled to collaborate just for fun, really. I'm just the kind of artist, because I'm interdisciplinary, everything for me is one-stop shop. I'll write, produce, choreograph, and do the music, all for whatever show I'm getting ready to do. And then usually I like to collaborate with other people to direct the show or to help me run the show, to help me execute my vision and be an extra set of eyes to look at the piece full circle, because I can only see in my mind, you know what I mean? And I'm out here doing this and I can't see what it looks like. And so I usually ask people that are very close to me that know what it is that I want to come in and be my eyes and my ears for said project and whatever it is I'm doing. But mainly, I like to do it because it's for fun. I mean, thank you very much. I'll pass it down all the way. I like to collab for fun. It's not a...
We're collaborating.
Yeah, we're collaborating right now. You see what I'm saying? But it's just really that for me. It's because I don't really have a necessity for a team in what it is that I do. It's just me, and I kind of just run the show.
Yeah. To me, like, trust is the thing about collaboration, that you have to trust people to do things that pleasantly surprise you. Being surprised is not hard. Being pleasantly surprised, where especially something that's near and dear to you, especially something that you, as a craft that you put a lot of time into and a lot of effort, like, it's like your soul goes into your craft in a sense, and the trust to give that to let someone else sort of play with like your work, it's hard to do. It's hard to give that to people. And like with Prince, it was impossibly hard, I think, at portions of his life, and he became more a collaborator as time went on. But he just decided that he could do it himself. That's why it said written, produced, recorded, blah, 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 9 words of what Prince did on his records. The first time we sort of saw that, by the way, in the music industry, of someone just going, this is utterly my vision solely. And when you're right, like when you're at the peak of your genius, you seem like a genius, rightfully. But then, the world keeps going, and so do you, and, it's harder and harder to be a genius all the time, Prince asked me one time, and why he asked me this, I don't know, but we were just talking, and he was like, if someone's a genius, are they always a genius? Is that a permanent attribute to someone? And I can't remember what I answered, because I still can't really answer that question. Like, is genius when your talents intersect with sort of public opinion in a sense? Or is it just a thing all on its own, whether people appreciate it or not? And sorry, I'm getting kind of far afield here, but collaboration is about trusting someone, being surprised, and being rewarded for your trust. And it makes your work better, and it sort of adds a life. Like, your own record becomes boring. Like, if you work on a record, you listen to these songs 9 million times making music, you're done with it. You're bored of it, except for those contributions by people other than yourself. Those are what keep you interested in your own work after a while. So to me, that's something that people have to take that leap, and sometimes they're too scared to, of just saying, no, I'm going to trust you and see what happens.
Right, and so to pick on something all of you have touched on, these seems to be some complexities to collaboration. If I look at my own work, whether it's you have an interest in working with someone on something, but they don't have the time, or you don't have the resources, whatever that may look like, how do you negotiate that? How do you, take a project that you want to be done in 6 months and might not show the fruits of that labor for another year, 10 years? How do you deal with that in terms of like realizing what the expectations are and managing them?
I had this issue maybe 5-6 years ago. I had collaborated with a friend to do an EP and do a project, but then life kind of happened, and it just kind of stopped. But I had such motivation to release the music, so I just kind of was like, well, here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna rewrite all this music, and I'm gonna put it out, and then we can collab another time and do a different project. And it worked out for the best for me. Like, I was really nervous to do it, and to have to, you don't wanna have to stop a project that you, especially when you're working with your friends or you're working with other artists. We're all sensitive about our stuff, and it's hard to do. But for me, if we're gonna put something down, it needs to press forward. Anytime I'm gonna go in and do some work, we're not just gonna do it idly or just do it in vain, especially if it's something that you're very compelled and that you worked very hard on. I just can't stop and dead a project or dead music or dead a piece that, we put so much work into. So I'll just keep moving forward. Like, you just keep pressing, There's always art to do, there's always work to do, you can always come back and work with the people again, as long as you keep relationships on the level, so to speak.
Right, and that's the key thing, right? To have that trust with each other that you can come back later, even if you fall out.
Yeah, it's no love lost,
Right.
But we're artists, and we gotta press. This is a business and an industry where we have to keep our faces out there, and we have to keep coming up with stuff. So, you keep the relationship good, and you part or move on amicably.
Yogi Berra or someone said something like, if you don't know what you want, you won't get it. Like, sometimes people confuse sort of the creative process and the editorial or publication process. Like, creativity can't be constrained. So like, sometimes I don't have agendas with, collaborations or such, where it's literally a creative process with very little expectation versus, projects you want to get done. And, editing something too soon in the creative process is a good way to never write a song, basically. Like if you start getting too critical too early in the process. I don't know how that relates to your question, but just the dynamic I think about, I guess.
I've had to learn I'm really a control freak, and I've discovered that more and more in the different events and different things that I do, that I like to be in control of everything, and so passing on different responsibilities or collaborating has been a struggle, and learning how to do that has been something over the years that I've gotten better at, but I really like to know exactly, and I know I get in the mindset, well, if I'm doing it, it's gonna be done how I want it to be. So how do you get outside of that in that way? And so in the last 3 or 4 years, I've been really trying to get better at that.
Yeah, I think going back to what I was saying earlier about just being clear about what your assumptions are and what your expectations are has been really important for me. I think something you said too earlier about, I've been in collaborations where I'm also trying to figure out the distinction between collaborations and partnerships. And so I've been in some collaborations where I've really tried to just be more open and be really democratic, and and you sometimes you can get to the point where nothing is happening, right? When you're just overly democratic and everything has to be done by consensus. And I was told once, because I was in a leadership role, but I was really trying to be open about having everybody inform it. And one of the partners just said to me, Kathy, eventually, and she was being really kind by not saying my name, she was like, eventually somebody just has to make a decision. And I think that's really important. I think what you were saying also, right? I mean, I think when you have hard deadlines and you're being held accountable to people, you have to do what needs to be done to get the project done, right? I've also been in very open collaborations where it's really just about creative people wanting to come together and just have fun, be creative, and let's see what we can come up with kind of collaborations, which are, it's not as much pressure. I think it's important for me anyways to be in those types of relationships also, because it allows me to just kind of be more free. And that then fuels, my other projects that really need to be done. I think communication is key, right? That is key to everything. And if there are complications in the communication, that's when collaborations can kind of fall apart. So when we do get to a point where we're not hitting deadlines, or we're not getting things done, or things just are not moving the way we expect them to, then we just have to have sit down and talk it out. And again, and not be, not fall victim to our own assumptions, and then start blaming each other. Well, I thought you were going to do that, and I thought you were going to do that. We could have fixed that if we just sat down and talked with each other and was really clear about what I am doing and what you are doing, and what my skills are and what your skills are, and that's why we decided to come together in the first place. So, again, it's never nearly as easy as it sounds when you're just talking about it, because you actually go through those emotions too, right? Well, damn, that person's not coming through, and I really care about that person, or I really respect them, and so how do you then confront the situation is a whole another kind of uphill.
And in a way, that's a vote in terms of what the plan is, in a sense. I'm not a control freak. I like to just kind of let things unfold and find sort of these natural paths. And there's times when it's when people let you down, it's one of the hardest things, because it's how did I cause this? Because if I'm not happy, it's my fault is sort of my attitude. It's trying to figure out what that means, that something wouldn't let you down. Do they not believe in this? Are they too busy? Is there, there's a reason here. And sometimes it's telling you something important, this is a dumb idea. You shouldn't be doing it. The fact that I can't get anyone to help me is trying to tell me something, So sometimes being let down is a gift. You just didn't really realize it. That's just the wrong course. Other times, there's many other things maybe that could mean, but to me, I want to listen to that stuff. When people fight for the chance to work with you on something, you're pretty sure it's a good idea, When you can't pay someone to work on it, it's probably not a good idea. But again, you have to decide that, don't follow the crowd per se.
Right, yeah, clearly defined roles. I would agree with that. Just, what we're going to bring to the table. I'm not a control freak, but I'm more I need to know what we're doing, and I need to know the direction that we're going. And then, like you, I like the stuff to unfold organically and whatnot, but it has to be clear what we're doing, where we're going, and how we're going to get there, you know, before I can say yeah and just go forward with that kind of stuff, because you got to be sure, you know. It's like, you know, collaboration with art is very, very important to me. Art is like something very close to me, like myself, my child, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's close like that. And so it's a very serious thing for me, and I can't just be willy-nilly about that. Yeah.
And so I want to think about like placing your identities in situations of collaboration. So I'm thinking of situations where myself, I have walked out because I felt that either my agency is not respected, or it's not a true partnership, it's not a true collaboration. There's a lot of extraction because I'm a Black woman, I'm an immigrant, I'm XYZ, that there's all these things about my identity that are placed in the room versus the value. And not that my identity is not a value, but, you know, so how do you navigate that? When I was younger, I would just walk away and not say anything. And someone earlier on talked about, I think it was Tony Blackman, about posting something on Facebook, you know, you do some vague booking, and now I'm getting more conscious and more critical of those relationships where I'll write something directly to someone and say, this is why I cannot go on with this. Could you talk about your own journeys towards walking away from collaborations where you did not feel that your value was respected?
It's very hard.
It is.
It's very, very hard. I was in a collective, and it was a huge collective. It was about 10 people. And we worked very, very hard. We went on tour together, did a couple tours, and we were on the brink. I mean, the complete verge of it being it, all the work, everything that we put into it. And I walked away from it. And it was one of the hardest things I ever had to do, but it was one of the most clearest things I ever had to do in my life. If it's toxic, even if it's good, like everything that we produced in this band, everything that we did was amazing. It was amazing. It was the right group of people. It was the right, it was symbiotic. It was beautiful, but at the same time, it was extremely toxic. And I don't feel like anybody should have to stay in a situation like that just because it's well off and it's helping me. Like, I could have stayed and we could have did that, and then it would have gotten bigger, and it would have still been the same dynamics. It would have still been the same toxicity. It would have, you know, and I think about that, and I think about where I'm at now, and it was one of the best decisions of my life. You just kind of have to handle that kind of stuff. You have to remember that you're a human being, and remember that you come first before your art, before anything else. Like, I've never been the kind of person to be like, oh, my art is everything, and I'll put all my life and my money and everything in that. You crazy. My mom and daddy passed on, you know what I'm saying? So I don't have no soft place to fall. So at the end of the day, for me, it's like, I gotta make sure I'm taken care of first. I gotta make sure I'm eating, and then I'm gonna do my art, and then I'm gonna work in that order. You know, but that toxicity and stuff, like, it could be good all day. It's just like a relationship. It could be great all day, but if there's something in the pit of your stomach making you feel like, nah, we got to part ways, we got to part ways. And it's just something that you have to human up and do.
Running the nonprofit, having an employee who you knew was not a good fit after 3 to 4 months working, that type of collaboration of asking somebody that this is not working, this is probably one of the most difficult things that I've had to do, as this is sort of their career path. They were excited for this, and it just was not gelling with what we were doing in our own office and the work we were doing. And so having those conversations, and especially when the rest of the team feels that way, and having to have that conversation and be the leader to do that, it's tough. But after that happened, everybody functioned a lot better, closer together, because that sort of toxic element was taken out of the equation. And I think sometimes once you identify the toxic element, you have to figure out what the plan is to move on and have those conversations. And I'm a big proponent of having open communication. So talking about what's not working, why it's not working, and these are the different strategies that we can take.
Yeah, I think identity is a big deal. I feel like my entire life has kind of revolved around me trying to figure out what my identity is, both culturally, mostly cultural, but I'm also in a lot of queer spaces, and so it's just very much a part of who I am and what I do and how I see this world. But to answer your question, the one thing that really comes to my mind is when I first started working at Chat, I found myself in a situation. We were producing a play, and we were in partnership with kind of a mainstream theater company, and we were sitting down with them, and we were trying to find a venue. And so there was 3 different parties. It was Chat and these 2 other organizations, which I will be respectful and not share who they are. But it became really clear to me maybe halfway. So this was a collaboration that I kind of inherited. I did not start and form myself. And so halfway through the conversation, it became really clear that we were just being tokenized, and that we were going to be the Hmong play that they were going to stage that year. And it was, I don't even know if there's a word that can describe that feeling that I had. It was just like, whoa, like really unsafe, but just really kind of like alarmed, and just felt like I just wanted to flee, right? But I just said, okay, well, clearly this is not, this just is not the right partnership, right? This is not the right partnership for this play. And as I was leaving, one of the guys turned to the other guy and said, do you know any Somali people? Right? And so it was like, and that just really like verified. I mean, like, that was not at all the kind of relationship that we wanted to be a part of, and we never went back to work with them. But that was a real lesson for me in thinking about the way I was going to carry this work, right? That was when I first started working at Chat. And so it became really clear, as the only Hmong arts organization in the world that's doing multidisciplinary arts, like, how do we prevent ourselves, and how do we safeguard ourselves, or not even safeguard ourselves, but how do we put ourselves in the world in a way that is not always tokenizing or pigeonholing, right? How do we be really confident in our identity as a people that doesn't have a country, and so outside of the Twin Cities, and sometimes in the Twin Cities, people still don't know who Hmong people are, right? So to always have to explain, your culture and your people, and it's like, and I don't want to be a spokesperson for them, but I speak from my own experiences. That was a moment that I will never forget, and that was really life-changing and really made me think differently about how to do this work, and how to nurture and develop Hmong artists so that they don't always have to do art to if they don't want to, right? So anyways, it's real.
Yeah, and it's hard,
It's a
man.
very
Yeah.
real thing.
Yeah, keeping your, I'm sorry. It's a difficult thing, especially with culture and being a woman and being a Black woman and all the rest of that, everything else. I'm bisexual. I'm part of like so many communities, and it's just like that. It's a hard thing to navigate, and having artistic integrity, like having that is a problem for many people. Many people in this industry, they don't tend to like that very much. So y'all keep that. Still, keep doing it. You don't back down. You don't back down. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
And bias, the thing that's hard about it is we're not aware of our own bias, and that's why we've had such a horrible history, as humanity. We just don't see the way that we've been trained to think, So sometimes things seem like facts that are biased, like this person's not fitting in the team. Because we have 4 white guys and 1, non-white guy, and that's the person not fitting in. It's like, is that like coincidence to you? Like, no, this is bias in disguise, So you have to like call the bullshit on yourself almost every day to not get fooled by yourself. I guess a side point about bias, because I think that it permeates everything. I do think that when it comes to work, it's like, when people are talking about the context around the work, like, and I've done this myself, like, I want to be a podcaster, I want to hang with podcasters, and they're, these minor celebrities in my world, and I deserve to be part of them, and my, voice in my head is more about, deserving to be there or wanting to be there than about making great podcasts or whatever. Like, do that, and then you're there on merit. And sometimes our enthusiasm precedes our skill, sort of, where we want to be part of it and we feel rejected and like, it's like, no, just do the work, do the work. And then it all kind of unfolds for you versus like trying to fight your way into the table before you've really done the same work as the people sort of around you, you know?
So we have a few minutes to Q&A, so think about your questions, ask deep questions. And then if there's something you all want to add, and there's a session later on this afternoon around living your integrity and making money. And I just wanted to touch on that because we've reflected on it a little bit in our last comments, and how sometimes walking away from a collaboration could actually be the difference between you making rent and trying to figure out your day-to-day. And you know, for many of us, so I've had several experiences with media houses in this state. Similar to what you've talked about, Kathy, in terms of being tokenized and deciding to walk away. So that meant walking away from a regular paycheck, walking away from health insurance, and that sort of thing. But sometimes I think it's foolish, like it's not actually bravery, it's just sort of like I get really angry and I walk away. But sometimes it's actually very deliberate. But then there are other ways that I find collaborations that actually fulfill me in ways that that monetary one did not. And so if you guys can reflect on that for a few seconds before I open it up to questions.
I think as an artist, the way I look at it, I will never stop working. I will never stop working. I will never stop working. Like even when I took a 5-year hiatus, bless you. Even when I took a 5-year hiatus, I was still working. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I was still writing, I was still creating and still doing all these things. So, you know, it was always like, if you have to go get a job at Subway, go. And I did for a year and a half before I found my corporate job. You know what I mean? Like, we have to do what we have to do. And that's kind of something that we sign on for when we make the sacrifices in our lives as being artists. There are some things that come a part of it that you have to do, and there's some things that you don't, you know. But I feel like walking away from the things that I did walk away from, at the time it wasn't good, at the time it was awful, but it was the best thing that I could have possibly ever done.
Yeah, I'm all about like supplementing. So I think in a position where I have resources, like I've always been an advocate for like paying artists for their work, and or, you know, like leaving it up to the artist to decide whether or not you have a good cause, you know what I mean? Because this idea of like, this is publicity for them, or this is, you know, is just really like, you can't make that decision, the artist has to make that decision. But, you know, again, as I've never been paid to do anything as an artist, necessarily, not professionally. But I will do certain projects so that I can do other free things. I've also, like, you know, when I approach artists to do work, I give them the real budget, right? I tell them what I have and what can we work under. And, you know, I've had artists come to me and, like, way lowball themselves, and I tell them, like, I have the budget for this, I will pay you this so that you can do free work for other groups, because I know that you're going to be approached by organizations that do not have the resources. And so I think it's really important to not undersell yourself, but, you know, there are a lot of nonprofits and organizations out there that can't pay either, right? And they'll pay small stipends or ask for free work. And I think that's important. I think it's important to also be able to support organizations that don't necessarily have the budget. And then there are the organizations that do have the budget, and that you should not undersell yourself in those situations. You know, but again, there have been contracts or projects that I don't love doing or working for, but that I will do so I can do other things.
Also, in the party throwing world, when you bring in more and more collaborators, the pizza keeps getting split smaller and smaller from what the door, and so you really have to be conscious of how that is and how that role is, because I've seen a number of colleagues and friends who throw an event with 7 partners and they all work their ass off for weeks promoting, and then the event comes and then they leave with $300 or something because they've been working so hard and there's so many people splitting that. So that's something that we've always been conscious about, of who we're bringing in, being really clear of how that works. And I think that in terms of any artist collaboration, really thinking about, well, this is the pie and this is how we're splitting, and being clear about that up front. And that can cause a little pull between people as well.
Can I? Oh. I just want to say, so I don't know, I don't know who's in the audience. If there's anybody in the audience that actually has a budget to work with, I really can't say this enough, and I've been saying this for the last 15, 20 years, put a line item in your budget for artists. You have to do this. If you're an artist, sorry, people don't usually do that, but just know that there are people that are advocating for that, and I think that you should really be asking for that as well, right? It's just this age-old thing. I mean, people just feel like they know that artists bring important things. They know that artists bring a draw. They know that artists enhances their event or whatever they're doing, and they also aren't respecting that profession as a profession, right? And so,
yes.
So I just want to, if you have any kind of authority or any kind of sway with a budget, please line item, in your budget for artists. And if you are an artist, advocate for yourself, Yep,
advocate to get paid. Advocate, because what you do is work. They wouldn't ask a plumber to come and do it for the love.
Right.
And
Straight up.
especially if you're freelance, because you're paying for much more than that. You're paying for the thinking. You're also paying for the transit. You're paying this so much more beyond
gas.
the 1 hour performance.
Right.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's like choosing the people I want in my life overrides every other decision practically. I'd rather work with someone, in an art or trade sense that is maybe of lesser skill that I relate to and love and would throw myself in front of a bullet for. That makes good everything, art, whatever, business, when you have relationships built on these actual things you care about. So to me, it's I don't so much judge a project or a collaboration as, am I whoring myself out in some sense, commercially or something like that. It's who are these people and what are we trying to do? Because that never will be whoring yourself out ultimately if there's true, genuine, collaboration. So it's I don't too much worry about, selling out if I'm working with the right people, because it's never selling out if you are.
All right, so we have questions in the audience. I actually can't see because the light is right in my eyes.
Have you got the microphone? Let me know if you-
Too confused, well.
Can I make another? I'm sorry. I just have to. This is not. This is just kind of my reaction. So I think something you said earlier was really important. I think there's. I wouldn't say that you were whoring yourself out, and I know that there's this real conflict. If you feel like you are selling out, or if you feel like you are truly doing something that is not in line with your values, absolutely. If you feel like you have to do, because I think there's a real privilege in being able to choose every single project when you can't eat, right? So what you were saying earlier, if you have to do certain things to feed yourself, that is one thing. I just think it's important to acknowledge that there is a real privilege when you can actually decide every single project that you want to do just based on artistic integrity.
Because that's what that is. That's why I would go work at Subway, because I have spent time being young and crying behind stages because I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing what I'm doing, and I feel like this is not good. And so that's just how I work that out, or how I would supplement that, because it's I'd rather work at Subway than get up here and or do whatever, you know what I'm saying? Because that's what being here, and especially being in Minnesota, it's a very slippery slope, and it's very tricky to navigate Black work for white audiences and for white theater companies and spaces. So it's very tricky. And if it's something that I think, that smells like Toba, which is the old circuit, it's the old vaudeville blackface circuit, and it still exists. So if it smells or feels like that, then I'm nah, I work a job, and I'm good, and I don't need that.
And your mental health is key, right?
Yes.
Because if you don't feel safe to do your art, then
what are we doing?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's the most sacred, special thing to me. And I can't let anything misrepresent me. I can't be in a show that I feel like, because that misrepresents my brand, my artistry, who I am.
It's also sort of a trade in terms of, yeah, we have to make a living, and a singer might do it, jingles or something like that. I don't see that as, I see that as separate from your art. Like, your art is what you would do no matter what. Like, you have to do it. But you got great pipes and you can sing a Coke commercial. It's like, go, that's awesome. But your art is something, you wouldn't want to take your art and sell it to Coke necessarily.
Correct.
But you would put your voice on there because you're a singer,
Yep, and I've done that. That's, yep, absolutely.
Yes, question.
My name is Arthur. I'm wondering if you can tell me how you've prepared, initiated, overcome nerves in order to approach someone new to collaborate or to find some people.
I've become an expert internet troll, where I look for things that are going well, and I email or Facebook message or create a connection that way, and then arrange a meeting after that. And I think that just being perceptive of what's going on and not being afraid to ask, and that may be easier said than done, but I think just experimenting and trying to get your ask out there and just have a really clear ask is, I think, what really makes it work, by saying this is what my vision is and this is how I would like you to be a part of it. Or I don't know what my vision is, let's talk about how we can make something happen together. So just being clear of what that initial communication is and then working it out. And I would say it never hurts to ask. And I'm an East Coaster now living in Minnesota, and Minnesotans sometimes can be scared behind the wall to jump forward to do the ask, and I think it's just worth asking. The worst, they say no. And then you move on and ask the next person.
Yeah, I concur. Just ask. Just ask. I mean, it's either yes or no. You know what I mean? And that's just kind of it. If you're not scared to be an artist, you shouldn't be scared to talk to other people. And, because we talk to other people with lights on a big stage every night, and that's what we do. So, after a while, I was a born extrovert, and like I've grown introverted just because of life and the things that have happened in my life. I'm more reclusive now. But I was the kind of kid to walk up, talk to anybody, anytime, anywhere. So that's just my thing. It's like, my mom always said, closed mouth don't get fed. Okay? So just always remember that.
And there's that saying, you have to be brave before you're good. And Prince said to me when I was like an assistant engineer at Paisley Park, and he had fired his engineer, Femi Gia, and he was like, none of you guys here can mix. And he was challenging me and all of us, like, you suck at this, roughly speaking, And I was like, you've never let me mix anything. And I was not prepared for that in terms of knowing how to mix. I mean, I thought I was, and we always think we are maybe, but I was like, you never let me. So that night he let me mix something. He went home and, I mixed it, and I knew I needed to make an impression on him, so I did this like weird intro where I called the phone and recorded it and this and that, and then dropped it off at his house, and it came back to the studio. He called me, 5 minutes later, and that mix is on the Graffiti Bridge record. He gave me that opportunity, and unquestionably he did. And he did it in a way that, would not have, you needed to be brave. He wanted you to put your ass out there. And, that was a gift he gave me by essentially challenging, demeaning me practically, but inspiring me to want to excel, So
That's how
if you don't take that leap, you'll never really get anywhere.
Yeah, you won't grow without that. Sometimes you got to have somebody that you love or that you admire or that you watch tell you about yourself a little bit. It brings your game up. It really does.
I was just going to say, just kind of a very tactical thing. Something that's been important for me, and I've been hearing kind of elements of it, is actually to have like a support system, right? So like people that are close to you and people that kind of like love you unconditionally, and to so like that gives me courage actually to be able to approach people that I feel a little less brave around, just because then if I do something really stupid, I can call them up, and if I am needing a little encouragement, I can call them up. So just kind of a tactical thing.
And even if you don't have a support system, be your own support system.
Sure. Yeah.
Be your own support system. It's hard,
Love
but it's
yourself.
a lot of digging, and you gotta keep digging, and just sometimes you gotta be that way. I spent a lot of time alone, so you can do that. You can prevail. You can find your way back into everything. But just be your own first.
Just have really enjoyed this entire conversation, so thank you. I work with artists who collaborate a lot, and sometimes we'll have 2 or 3 authors who want to do a book together or create an anthology. Most times it works wonderfully, but I recently had 2 friends working together for 2 years on a book project, and one friend woke up at 3 in the morning and sent a text to her to her partner and said, "You know what, I changed my mind, you're not the right person to work with me on this." And it was just, gut-wrenching for the other friend. And I've stayed pretty neutral on it. But I'm wondering if you've ever had someone walk away from you that you were collaborating with, and how did you manage that?
Great question.
Never.
I've never had anybody walk away from me in collaboration as far as that. Like, I've had relationships, that kind of walking away, but
I was saying
but not in the art. Yeah, no.
my nonprofit world, when you're working with a funder who's funding a really exciting program that's doing really wonderfully with students, then all of a sudden you get that letter that it's not funded anymore. That's that type of walking away where you thought that they were the ones providing the resources this program has to go. Really, it doesn't have the personal relationship where you know the people as well, but it's sort of by someone leaving this project makes it feel like it's not worth it. And so I think it takes time and reflection that's saying what we are doing is worth it, and really talking with other people who are involved or getting other people on support, and really going back to the drawing board saying, well, this didn't work from this way. How can we reshift this to make it work? Maybe it's both of them are writing their own pieces that are companions to each other, or just think of really outside of the box, what are other answers to do this? And I think that's what's helped during those type of times.
Yeah, I don't have an exact example, but I am thinking about a couple of different things. One is more of a collaboration that I initiated between 2 artists. And again, going back to the assumption thing, so I just assumed that when you bring 2 brilliant artists together, they make even more brilliant art. And that was not that was not true in this situation. It brought a lot of pain, actually. So that's one thing. Is just I think that, and friends and family do this. I mean, they always people always say don't go into business with your friends. Don't go into business with And there's some truth to that, which reminds me of another example that I just realized recently. So a lot of the bands that I've worked with in the past have been kind of more organic bands that have like friends that wanted to make music together, and were making beautiful music together, but just are no longer active and have broken up for a lot of different reasons, because friends just, they want to be friends, they don't necessarily want to be in business with each other. And some of the bands that I know of that have been around for like decades and are like in it for the business of it, they make really good art together, but they're not necessarily friends, and they're not necessarily hanging out all the time. So there's just, I don't know exactly if there's like biology or chemistry in that, or what that is.
It's the
But
human thing.
yeah, right,
It's the human
right. So those are the 2 kind of like things that came to mind, but just like, 2 brilliant artists don't necessarily make brilliant art.
And I can attest to that. I can attest to that. It's very hard, especially when egos are involved and all the rest of that, and it's a difficult thing. But like, even like you said, like with bands and stuff, like my band, we're cool. And that's about as far as it goes. We don't really hang out too much, even like we're in the same shows, we'll have a drink together, whatever. We go on, we play, and that's about it. Because it's like, nah, man, this is work. This is our work, and it's our livelihood, and we don't need all this extra stuff, this, strange bedfellows kind of intermingling sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I did that. That was the group I told you about earlier where I had to bounce out, because at the end of the day, it's like, oh, we too close. Yeah, it's a little much, and now it's interfering with the art, and it's interfering with everything, because now everything's all in the mix of that. So yeah.
I have learned a lot working with drag queens and drag kings coming together to collaborate to perform one performance together, and you can learn a lot from them. That's my final piece of wisdom.
Yeah, and I wondered too if there was something underlying, because I've been in collaborations before where I thought something came off left field that I never expected, and yet someone had, because there was no communication, something had happened, and over, no one was bringing it to the table. It wasn't part of the conversation, and so it impacted, it impacts future relationships. And so then later on you realize, oh, they're still doing the same thing. We're working on a book together, and they're still behaving in the same way. And I think one of the lessons too, especially once it comes to when I realized that if I'm working with someone and we do have mutual respect for each other, then I just remember the other person across from me is also human, and there are things that they do that might get in the way of our work. And so how do you have that mutual respect to have a conversation with each other where you meet each other in the middle? And so it looks like we're almost out of time, and there is the obligatory question of Prince's influence on your life and your work. I will say that moving to Minnesota, like most people have mentioned here, just that because Prince is from Minnesota, that's sort of like a talking point for people. First Avenue, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been there. I wonder if you have like more profound impact that he's had on your life. You've shared a lot.
Yeah.
Right. You've worked with him in ways that the rest of us might not, but
I never knew him. I went out, he had a festival called Xenophobia when I was 16, and I was with that band once again. And we were asked to be out there. He had asked for us to come out there, and I was just like super geek, because I grew up listening to Prince my whole life. My mom had all his catalog, and I was into like all of Prince's other stuff. I was into like Madhouse and, all his classical and jazz stuff, Venus de Milo, and then, I love Parade. Parade was my favorite album, so yeah, that was my favorite. And Graffiti Bridge was like my Rocky Horror. We used to watch it and laugh, and it was just crazy. It was just nuts, that kind of stuff, So I was just very excited to go out there, and we went out there, and we went through the house and stuff, and then all of a sudden I looked in the corner, and he's peeking. And I seen him, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I looked again, and he was gone. And it was like... And I'm trying to tell them, I was like, man, he was here. And they're like, yeah, whatever, he wasn't here. He was here, he was in the corner, I promise you, right hand. That man was in the corner, and he peeked out at us. And, ever since then, because he had called us out there, I just felt so honored. And I felt like I was a real artist right then and there. I was just like, I am so vindicated, because I always felt like I was the prodigal daughter. I always felt like I was the odd man out, or like I was always a black sheep or a redheaded stepchild, in the industry, because it was just how I felt. I always felt like I wasn't good enough for a long time. And so him asking us to come out there, it was just one of the pinnacles of my entire career, because I was like, if Prince liked what you do, and he asks you to come out and do something, then that means you're good. Because he doesn't like nobody, you know what I mean? He likes what he likes, and and I'm like that too. I like what I like, and so that was one of the biggest things that kept me going in this industry, was knowing that somebody like that, respected what it was that I did when so many other people didn't respect it. I've always admired the man just because he danced to the beat of his own drum, simply, and I say it all the time, because that's me, dance to the beat of my own drum. And he went full speed ahead with that, regardless of the industry, regardless of whatever, and was still up there dealing with that, dealing with the high high caliber record deals and things like that. And this man still did what he wanted. And it proved to me that it can be done when everybody's telling you that it can't. And that you have to follow these specific guidelines, and you have to pay your dues, and you have to play the role, and you have to do this, and, you know, play your part, and, you know, fake it till you make it. That, you don't have to do that, because he didn't, and so many other people did too. So that if any profound effect that Prince had on my life, it would be that.
Yeah, I think that's really true, and for a lot of people, and really nobody else can look that good and in that purple and the flowers, and you know, but so you know, there's always like there are a couple of regrets that I have in my life. One of them is not being able to see Prince live, Michael Jackson also, but so maybe like a year and a half ago or something, there was a Hiatus Coyote show at Fine Line. And, you know, so there are certain things about people like Prince. So I was at the show, I was on the floor, kind of close to the stage, and there was just something about like the room that had happened that like changed. And then we realized that Prince was like sitting up on the second level. You know, and it was like that kind of like, and I don't know if I felt that when he walked in or something, but like we saw him and we weren't sure if it was him, but it was him, and there was just something really kind of like powerful about having his presence in the room. And you just, you know, again, it's one of those things where like, I didn't really know that people could do that. Like they walk into the building and the whole, like the air changes. And that was my closest brush to Prince. You know, I never got a call to perform. I never made anything for him. What am I doing up here? You know? But I mean, just being in the same building with him was like, it had a profound impact on me, and it changed it. I mean, I was like there for that show, but that, you know, just watching him sit there was like amazing. Yeah.
I was gonna say similar, not being born and raised from here, but learning all about Prince. I mean, I kind of knew when I moved here in 2000, but getting everybody else's Prince excitement really got me to discover Prince. And I would say when I was at a Janelle Monáe concert twice, he was there, and you could see him in the booth, and it really brought the excitement level. And then also at Flip Phone, we do around 4 to 5 events at First Avenue a year, and just the energy of going to that space, going to the dressing room, like that's the toilet Prince used. And just like knowing that his energy is there for the events really makes it a really unique and exciting venue to work at. And I think everybody who comes to the party really, especially whenever you play a Prince jam at First Avenue, it's unlike anything
Everybody hits
ever.
the floor. Yeah,
It's,
everybody
it's,
hits the floor.
yeah, it's crazy fun. And so just that's my relationship with him. I wish I had a chance to see him perform. But it's still everywhere you go, people say Prince, Prince, wherever you're traveling.
It is. Even when he passed away, I was one of the singers that they called down the first day after he died. And like they called, first of all, I was just like, this isn't real. And so, you know, I mean, like the whole day, I'm like, nope, this isn't real. And then they got the call from the current, and they were like, you know, we want you to come down here and do this. And I promise you, it was like all the words, all the lyrics of his songs coming together at one time, and just the energy in the air. It was like I remember running through the crowd like bodyguard with my hood on, trying to get through to get to the stage, and there was just people, you couldn't see past Hennepin. All you could see past Hennepin was people. And just the turnout, the emotion, how it was just the emotion and the tension in the air, and just everything was so thick you could cut it. And then the sky turned purple, and there was people running everywhere. And I remember being on the stage looking like, oh my gosh, this man is here. He's here. You know, I mean, it's that profound that his energy will never die. You know, and just the fact that he will continue to influence people for years and years and years to come, because his music is so timeless, so classic, that it'll never cease. It's just, that's just something to be said. It goes outside of an artist. It goes outside of everything. Just who he was just such a force and such an energy that it's just uncanny. He was just uncanny.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. Looks like Kevin and Susan want to get on stage next.
Like, all right,
We could
PaviElle.
talk about collaboration for a long time, but thank you.